We are back from beautiful Pueblo, Colorado, the third location on the Velshi Across America 2020 tour. This election year in particular has come to be defined by a handful of topics and themes, one of which is the immeasurable racial strife experienced by people of color in America. In light of this, millions of Americans of all stripes have taken to the streets to fight for justice that people of color so rightly deserve. This moment has been felt in Pueblo as well. And to that end, I asked my panel of voters how they feel about the recent protests they've seen in person and in coverage by the media. And as you can imagine, their answers were varied.
I think a lot of people are frightened by what they see on television. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from people. They're afraid to drive to Denver. They're afraid the road might be blocked and they might find themselves in a frightening and potentially dangerous situation. I think that people are united behind the idea that there needs to be equal protection under the law for everybody. What happened to Breonna Taylor was horrific and a tragedy, and things like that should never happen. But part of that comes from how much power we give government. And the more we restrain government and the smaller we make our government, the less likely it is for things like that to happen. So I think Republicans and Democrats can find some common ground and make some criminal justice reform. But I think that you lose a lot of ground when you smash store windows and you graffiti public buildings and you make people frightened by surrounding their car and banging on it, and then bad things happen and people become more polarized, and that's not good for anybody, and it's really bad for the nation.
So I would say the question of how small you make government is an interesting one, because ultimately the folks who want to defund the police also believe in smaller government, right? That's the ultimate in small government. I take it you don't want to go that far.
No, I don't want to defund the police, but we need to reform the laws that allow things like no-knock raids. You know, only when there's imminent threat to public safety should a no-knock raid be executed. A no-knock raid for a drug warrant, not so much.
Actually, I do agree in part. I think there's such thing as a right sizing of your police function. What I've noticed over the years is that when we moved away from the draft, it seems that we've grown now this law enforcement function exponentially as a result, and we've militarized this law enforcement function. It's confusing to me that we still have a program 1033 where the obsolete equipment that we used in the service is now being handed down by grant to local law enforcement functions. So I would agree that we need to right size that function. It needs to be back, I believe, to a peace function. We're Americans and we're residents of this country, that we have decided that the right answer is to militarize a police function against Americans and residents of this country is outrageous to me. I believe in a person's right to protest. I'm not going to get caught up in whether or not something was broken. I paid for it anyway. As a taxpayer, I pay for it to be fixed, and I pay for it to be policed. We all do.
Thank you. Jessica, what do you think about the state of things in the country right now in terms of these protests and what people are feeling?
It's very scary. I have a 10-year-old son who watches the news. The divisiveness in this country, the hate towards America, the wanting to rewrite history, it's very sad. And, you know, I appreciate and thank you for your service, and Operation Desert Storm is near and dear to my heart. I was 13 years old and I was ridiculed for wearing a yellow ribbon around from 1990, the day the first bombs were dropped, until all those soldiers came home. So I have an immense sense of patriotism and pride for my country, and watching it burn and just the violence, it's unacceptable, and it scares me for the future of my son.
Thank you. Ian.
Well, first of all, I want to say Black Lives Matter without a doubt. Brown Lives Matter too. I come from a community where police abuse was real. I saw violence to people in my family, to community members, guns pulled unnecessarily on people. The drug war clearly needs to change. Criminalizing people's emotional addictions does not help anybody. I think reforming the police is only the first step. It's only stopping people from entering the system. But we still have private prisons that need to be reformed or actually abolished. We should be owning those as people. I think once you get out of prison, the discrimination that you face in jobs and in housing is very real. someone is always a criminal forever, that seems so un-American. If you pay your time, you should pay your time. I've been involved in advising a group in Denver. It's called the STAR program, where we've literally taken the police out of response. So when people call 911, they can get response from mental health and paramedics. Because so often we've seen where sometimes someone's having a mental crisis and they end up dead. To me, that is completely wrong. And when we talk about reforming the police, defunding the police, it's about reallocating what in my community is more than 40% of our resources are going to putting people in jail and long-term making them check a box that's going to keep them from living a better future. And I'm just not okay with that. Do I want rapists taken off the street? Hell yeah. Do I want murderers to be found? Yes, I do. And I would rather the police would be focusing on those than criminalizing people for petty offenses. Your thoughts?
I will echo Ian. Black Lives Matter. We have a long history in the U.S. of discrimination and racism, and it's got to end at some point. We look at Colin Kaepernick and him being blackballed from football, and now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon saying, oh, we should have listened to him. There have been protests for decades. We look at John Lewis, the Honorable John Lewis, and we look at things that happened even before that. We protested. It's what this country is founded on, is protesting. Peaceful and not peaceful. The Boston Tea Party was not peaceful. There was property destruction. And so here we are today, feeling as if white society, and of course I'm a white woman, but I'm standing with the protesters, I'm standing with my black brothers and sisters. Black Lives Matter, protesting, coming to the table, talking. We have to start now to finish what the Constitution should have addressed 235 years ago, and it didn't.
Regina, you're in a unique position. You literally went from being undocumented, which in some cases people think is illegal in this country, to being a lawyer, to
Yes.
getting educated in this country and becoming a lawyer. I want to understand what law and order means to you.
Law and order, you know, the laws have to be just. There is a, I think that's the biggest one, right? An unjust law isn't a law. So I don't believe in that. In terms of this whole idea about me being undocumented and being here illegally, let's say, who is the one that is making that law and who is the one that is determining that? Because Colorado used to be a part of Mexico, which is where I was born. And it was somebody else that decided that at some point that meant you were now illegal in this country. With this whole idea of Black Lives Matter and these protests, it is lawful to have a protest. And I would invite the people that are scared about what these protests are and what they mean to come out to a protest. I don't remember the exact number, but I know that over 90% of those protests have been peaceful. You can't base your entire opinion about what they are based on a 30-second news clip or on the one bad thing that happened. Obviously, that's what the news outlets are going to focus on. But by and large, that is not what they are about. And if people come out and listen to others' experiences and why they're actually there, I think it would change a lot of minds, and we could come to a place where we could agree a lot more. But people have to be open to listening and to listening to people's experiences outside of their own.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.